house had been too quiet lately. Even the old grandfather clock in the hallway seemed hesitant to break the silence, as if time itself had learned to tread softly since Harold passed. Evelyn Carter stood at the bottom of the attic stairs, her hand resting on the worn wooden banister, listening. To the emptiness that had become her constant companion, each step creaked beneath her feet like a whisper from the past, urging her upward, not just into the attic, but into the years she thought she had safely tucked away. At 68, she had learned that some journeys couldn't be avoided forever. Sunlight filtered through the small circular window, and the air smelled faintly of cedar and old paper, the scent of things too precious to throw away, but too painful to revisit. Dust particles danced in the golden beams like memories refusing to settle. She pulled the nearest cardboard box toward her. Medical records, personal collection was written in her own neat handwriting. 40 years of nursing at Millbrook Community Hospital, reduced to mementos and thank you cards. Each item told a story of healing, hope, and the quiet heroism of ordinary days. Her fingers brushed something smooth and cold. Not paper, older, heavier. When she pulled it free, her pulse quickened. A photograph. The child's eyes stared back at her, hollow, pleading. Evelyn's hand flew to her chest. She turned the picture over with trembling fingers. 4 small words written in trembling blue ink. He's so hungry. It wasn't just the words. It was the memory behind them clawing its way out of the dark. Outside, a gentle breeze stirred the attic dust. But in her mind, the air was heavy with storm and sirens again. The rain was hammering the hospital windows, and somewhere down the corridor, a child's cry pierced the night. In Millbrook, hunger was an old story, but that night in 1987, it had a face. Evelyn pressed the photo to her heart. After all these years, she had finally stopped running from that night. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the past was already on its way back to find her. The storm had been building all evening, rattling the windows of Millbrook Community Hospital like restless spirits demanding entry. Evelyn adjusted her white nursing cap and checked the wall clock. 11:47 p.m. The emergency department was unusually quiet for a Saturday night, with only the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the steady rhythm of rain against glass. She was reviewing patient charts when the automatic doors whooshed open, bringing with them a gust of cold October air and something else, a small figure silhouetted against the storm. The child. Theed. Couldn't have been more than 7 years old, her thin frame swallowed by an oversized coat that hung like a tent around her tiny shoulders. Muddy sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as she stepped forward, leaving a trail of rainwater and autumn leaves. "Honey, are you lost?" Evelyn hurried. "Lost?" Evelyn. Around the reception desk, her heart immediately recognizing the universal language of a child in need. The little girl looked up with eyes too old for her face, eyes that had seen things children shouldn't see. Her dark hair was matted against her head, and despite the warm hospital air, she was shivering. "I need help," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm outside. "Not for me, for him." Evelyn knelt down to the child's level, speaking in the gentle tone she'd perfected over decades of caring for frightened patients. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma." The girl's small, hand moved protectively to her stomach. "But he's the one who's hungry. He's always so hungry, and I can't make it stop." Dr. Martinez appeared from behind the triage curtain, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to professional concern as he took in the scene. Evelyn caught his eye and saw her own thoughts reflected there. This wasn't just a lost child. This was something more complicated, more heartbreaking. "Emma," Evelyn said softly. "Where are your parents, honey?" The child's eyes darted toward the doors, then back to Evelyn's face. "Gone, but he's still there waiting for..." "Still there?" "Me, I promised I'd bring help." Outside, thunder rolled across the Tennessee hills like a warning. Inside, Evelyn felt something shift in her chest, the familiar pull of a nurse's calling, but deeper this time. More personal. She had no way of knowing that this moment would echo through her dreams. For the next 35 years, the social worker arrived at dawn, her clipboard thick with forms and her expression weary from too many cases like this one. Mrs. Patterson had seen it all in her 20 years with Child Protective Services, but something about Emma's story troubled her more than usual. The address she gave us doesn't exist, Mrs. Patterson explained to Evelyn over coffee in the hospital break room. Millbrook Road ends at the Hendersons' farm, and they haven't seen any strangers around. Evelyn stirred her coffee absently, her mind still replaying the night's events. Emma had been treated for malnutrition and exhaustion, but physically she was going to be fine. Emotionally was another story entirely. What about the brother she mentioned? Evelyn asked. She was so insistent that someone needed help. Mrs. Patterson's pen tapped against her clipboard. That's what's strange. She keeps talking about him being hungry, but when we ask direct questions, what's his name, how old is he, where exactly is he, she becomes vague, almost like she's protecting a secret. Dr. Martinez joined them, looking as tired as they all felt. I've seen cases like this before. Sometimes children create imaginary companions to cope with trauma. The hungry brother might represent her own needs she's learned to project onto someone else because asking for help directly feels too dangerous. Evelyn set down her coffee cup, something nagging at the back of her mind. But she seemed so specific about it, the way she touched her stomach when she talked about him. Children are complicated, Mrs. Patterson said gently. The important thing now is finding her a safe placement while we investigate. I've contacted Riverside Children's Home. They have an opening. Through the break room window, Evelyn could see Emma sitting in the pediatric ward, staring out at the clearing sky. The child had barely spoken since giving them the non-existent address, and every attempt to learn more about her family had been met with silence or confusing. Half answers. Something about this case felt different. In all her years of nursing, Evelyn had developed an instinct for reading between the lines of what patients couldn't say. And Emma was hiding something, not out of fear, but out of love. The question was, who was she protecting and why? 3 days later, the truth finally emerged, or at least part of it. Deputy Sheriff Williams had driven to every rural road within 30 miles of Millbrook, following leads that led nowhere. It was old Tom Henderson who finally provided the breakthrough, mentioning an abandoned cabin deep in the woods, where he'd sometimes seen smoke during the harsh winter months. Evelyn wasn't supposed to be there when they found it, but something had compelled her to follow the police cars down the muddy forest path. She stayed back as the officers approached the small, weathered structure that looked like it might collapse with the next strong wind. The cabin was empty, but it told a story. Inside, they found evidence of recent habitation, a sleeping bag in the corner, empty cans scattered around, and children's drawings taped to the walls with medical tape. The drawings showed stick figures of a girl and a smaller figure, always standing close together, always holding hands. Looks like someone's been squatting here for months, Deputy Williams observed, photographing the scene. Maybe longer. Evelyn picked up one of the drawings that had fallen to the floor. It showed 2 figures sharing what looked like a single piece of bread, with crayon words written in a child's careful hand. Emma and him always together. Mrs. Patterson appeared at her shoulder. We've been asking Emma about this place all morning. She finally admitted to living here, but she still insists someone else was with her. She becomes distressed when we suggest she might have been alone. What if she wasn't alone? Evelyn asked quietly. The social worker's expression softened with professional sympathy. Sometimes isolation creates its own realities, especially for children. The psychological evaluation suggests Emma may have developed a coping mechanism, imagining a companion who needed her care. It gave her purpose, a reason to keep going. But Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling they were missing something crucial. That evening, she returned to the hospital to say goodbye to Emma before the transfer to Riverside Children's Home. Emma sat by the window, still clutching the small cloth doll the day nurse had given her. I keep my promises, Emma whispered as Evelyn approached. even when it's hard. What promise, sweetheart? Emma looked up with those two old eyes. To remember him. Always. Remember. The next morning, Emma was gone, transferred to a new life. Evelyn never saw her again, but the photograph remained. 35 years had a way of changing everything and nothing at all. Golden Meadows Sr. Living felt like a different world from the bustling hospital corridors where Evelyn had spent most of her adult life, but the rhythms of care remained familiar. Medication schedules, meal times, and the quiet conversations that happened between patients and those who tended to them. Mrs. Carter, your new aide will be starting today, announced Director Susan Walsh, her cheerful voice echoing down the hallway. I think you'll really like her. She's got wonderful recommendations. Evelyn adjusted the quilt Harold's mother had sewn, the one luxury she'd insisted on bringing to her small apartment. At 68, she'd made peace with needing help, though the transition from caregiver to care recipient still felt strange. I'm Anna, said a warm voice from the doorway. Evelyn looked up and felt something flutter in her chest. Not quite recognition, but something close to it. The young woman was perhaps 35, with kind brown eyes and gentle hands that moved with the confidence of someone who truly understood caregiving. Anna Martinez, she continued, stepping into the room. I'll be helping with your daily activities and medications. I know transitions can be difficult, so please let me know if there's anything that would make you more comfortable. Martinez, Evelyn repeated thoughtfully. Are you related to Dr. Martinez? He used to work at Millbrook Hospital. Anna's face brightened. My uncle. He always spoke so highly of the nurses there, said they were the real heroes of healthcare. Something about Anna's smile tugged at a memory Evelyn couldn't quite place. There was something familiar in the way she moved around the room, checking the temperature, adjusting the curtains, ensuring everything was just right. It was the kind of attentiveness that came from understanding what it meant to truly need care. Have we met before? Evelyn asked suddenly. Anna paused, a fleeting expression crossing her face. I don't think so, but sometimes people remind us of others we've known, don't they? My uncle used to say that caring creates its own kind of family. Over the following days, Evelyn found herself looking forward to Anna's visits. There was something soothing about her presence, something that went beyond professional competence. Anna had a gift for listening, for knowing when to speak and when to simply sit in comfortable silence. But late at night, when the corridors grew quiet, Evelyn found herself wondering about the shadows in Anna's eyes, shadows that seemed too deep for someone so young. Tell me about your nursing days, Anna said one afternoon, settling into the chair beside Evelyn's bed. They'd fallen into this routine over the past few weeks. Anna would finish her official duties, then stay. For a few extra minutes to chat, Evelyn found these conversations surprisingly comforting. Most of the staff at Golden Meadows were kind but hurried, treating her with the gentle efficiency reserved for the elderly. Anna was different. She listened like someone who understood that every story mattered. 40 years at Millbrook Community, Evelyn said, her fingers absently smoothing the quilt. Saw everything you can imagine. Births, recoveries, miracles. Some things that weren't quite miracles. What was the hardest part? Anna asked quietly. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment, surprised by the question's directness. Most people asked about the rewarding moments, the success stories. Anna seemed to understand that nursing wasn't just about happy endings. The children, Evelyn said finally. When you can heal a body but can't fix what brought them to you in the first place. When you send them back to situations you know aren't safe, because that's what the system requires. Anna's hand stilled in her lap. Did that happen often? More than it should have. Evelyn studied Anna's profile, noticing the tension that had crept into her shoulders. There was one case that stayed with me. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, who came in during a storm. She kept talking about someone who was hungry, someone who needed help, but we could never quite figure out. Evelyn trailed off, watching Anna's reaction. The young woman had gone very still, her breathing shallow. What happened? To her? Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. That's what haunted me. She was transferred to a children's home, and I never learned how her story ended. For 35 years, I've wondered if I did enough, if I asked the right questions, if I could have. Anna stood, abruptly, moving to the window. I'm sure you did everything you could. Sometimes the system just fails people. There was something in Anna's tone, not judgment, but recognition, like someone who had experienced that failure firsthand. Anna, Evelyn said gently, did you grow up in foster care? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Anna didn't answer immediately. She stood at the window, watching the late afternoon sun filter through the oak trees outside, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. I grew up in the system, she said finally. Riverside Children's Home, then a series of foster families. Some were kind, others. She let the sentence hang unfinished. Evelyn felt her pulse quicken. Riverside Children's Home. The same place Emma had been transferred all those years ago. What year were you born? Evelyn asked, trying to keep her voice casual. 1987, October. Anna turned from the window, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. A stormy night, according to my file. The nurses at the hospital where I was found always joked that the weather matched my dramatic entrance into the world. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. October 1987. A stormy night. A hospital. Anna, Evelyn said carefully, do you remember anything about that night? About how you came to be at the hospital? Something flickered across Anna's face. Surprise, recognition, maybe fear. Not much, I was very young. The social workers said I was malnourished, confused. I apparently kept talking about someone who wasn't there, someone I was worried about. Evelyn's hands began to tremble. She gripped the quilt tighter, trying to steady herself. Someone you were worried about? Anna sat back down, leaning forward slightly. Mrs. Carter, are you all right? You look pale. The person you were worried about, Evelyn pressed gently. Do you remember anything specific? Anna was quiet for a long moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. It's strange. I've never talked about this with anyone, but lately, being here, talking with you, old memories have been surfacing. I keep remembering this feeling of being responsible for someone smaller than me, someone who was always hungry. The word hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. I used to have nightmares, Anna continued, her voice growing softer, about leaving someone behind, about promises I couldn't keep. The therapist said it was common for traumatized children to create imaginary companions, but it felt so real. Evelyn closed her eyes, seeing Emma's face as clearly as if 35 years hadn't passed. The same eyes, the same careful way of moving through the world, the same protective instinct. Anna, she whispered, what was your name before the adoption? Your original name? Anna's face went completely still. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the distant hum of the air, conditioning and the soft tick of the wall clock. Emma, she said quietly. My name was Emma. Evelyn felt the world tilt slightly, as if the earth had shifted beneath golden meadows. She reached for the small photo she'd kept in her bedside drawer, the one from the attic, the one that had started this impossible journey of memory and recognition. Emma, Evelyn repeated, her voice thick with emotion. Emma, who lived in a cabin in the woods. Emma, who came to Millbrook Hospital on a stormy night in October, asking for help for someone who was hungry. Anna's eyes widened, and Evelyn saw the exact moment when recognition bloomed across her features. It was like watching sunrise break over a landscape that had been hidden in darkness for decades. You were there, Anna whispered. You were the nurse, the one with kind eyes who knelt down to talk to me. I remember your voice. Evelyn nodded, tears spilling freely now. I never forgot you. I searched for you in every child's face I treated after that night. I wondered for 35 years if you were safe, if you were happy, if you'd found people who loved you. Anna's composure cracked then, and she pressed her hands to her face. When she looked up, her own eyes were bright with tears. I can't believe it's you. All these weeks something felt familiar, but I thought it was just wishful thinking. Evelyn reached out and took Anna's hands in her own. They were warm, strong, capable. The hands of someone who had learned to take care of others, just as she once had. Emma, she said gently, I need to ask you something, and I need you to know that whatever the answer is, it doesn't change anything about how glad I am to see you again. Anna nodded, though her expression grew guarded. That night, when you kept talking about someone who was hungry, someone you needed to help, you said he. You had a little brother, didn't you? The question settled between them like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through both their careful composure. Anna's face crumpled, and in that moment, Evelyn saw not the competent 35-year-old woman, but the frightened 7-year-old who had walked into her hospital carrying the weight of the world. Yes, Anna whispered. I had a brother. Anna was quiet for so long that Evelyn began to worry she'd pushed too hard, asked too much, but then Anna began to speak, her voice soft and distant, as if she were pulling the words from a place she'd kept locked away for decades. His name was Michael. He was 4 when... She paused, gathering strength. Our parents had some problems. Addiction, mostly. We ended up on our own more and more, and then one day they just didn't come back. Evelyn squeezed Anna's hands gently, offering silent encouragement. Michael was always small for his age, and when the food ran out, he got sick so quickly. I tried everything. I begged from neighbors when I could, looked through trash bins behind restaurants, but it wasn't enough. Oh, sweetheart, Evelyn whispered. That night I came to the hospital, he was so weak. I thought if I could just get help, bring back medicine or food or someone who knew what to do. Anna's voice broke. I promised him I'd come back. I promised I'd bring help. Evelyn felt her heart shatter for the second time in 35 years. First for the little girl who'd carried such an impossible burden, and now for the woman who'd lived with the guilt of that promise ever since. But when the social workers went to find him, the cabin was empty. They said I must have been confused. That trauma sometimes makes children imagine things that feel real. They were so kind about it, so understanding, but they didn't believe me. How long? Evelyn asked gently. 3 days. I was at the hospital for 3 days before they transferred me to Riverside. 3 days too long. Anna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I tried to run away twice to go back for him, but they found me both times. Said it was too dangerous, that I needed to focus on healing and moving forward. The weight of it, 35 years of guilt, of wondering, of carrying, a secret too painful to share, settled in the room around them. I became a caregiver because of him, Anna continued. Every patient I help, every person I feed or comfort or protect, it's my way of keeping that promise, of taking care of him, even though I couldn't save him when it mattered. Most. Evelyn pulled Anna into her arms then, holding her like she'd wanted to hold that frightened little girl all those years ago. You were 7 years old, she whispered fiercely. 7. You did everything a child could possibly do. More than any child should ever have to do. The weeks that followed their conversation changed something fundamental between them. Anna still came for her shifts, still provided the same professional care, but now there was something deeper. A connection that transcended the usual boundaries between caregiver and patient. They talked about everything. Anna's journey through foster care, her determination to become a nurse, the family she'd eventually found with Dr. Martinez and his wife when she aged out of the system. Evelyn shared stories of her marriage to Harold, her years at the hospital, the quiet satisfaction of a life spent in service to others. But mostly they talked about healing. I used to think that loving someone meant never letting go, Anna said one afternoon as they sat in the courtyard, watching residents tend to the community garden. I held on to that guilt about Michael for so long, it became part of who I was. And now? Evelyn asked. Anna was quiet for a moment, watching an elderly man carefully water the tomato plants. Now I think maybe love means learning to forgive ourselves for being human, for being limited, for doing our best with what we had. Evelyn nodded, thinking of her own journey. I carried you with me for 35 years, wondering if I'd done enough, wondering if there was something more I could have asked, some way I could have prevented you from being alone. But I wasn't alone, Anna said softly. Not really. I carried your kindness with me everywhere I went. The way you knelt down to talk to me, the way you made me feel like I mattered, that became the foundation for how I learned to treat others. The truth of it settled around them like a blessing. They had both been carrying pieces of each other all along, neither knowing that their brief encounter had planted seeds that, would bloom into careers dedicated to caring, to healing, to ensuring that no one faced their struggles alone. Sometimes, Evelyn said, echoing words she'd once read somewhere, love finds its way back, even after a lifetime. Anna smiled, and for the first time since their reunion, it reached all. The way to her eyes, even when we think we've lost it forever. As the sun set over golden meadows, two women sat together in comfortable silence, finally understanding that some promises are kept not through grand gestures, but through the quiet choice to care for others day after day, year after year. That sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to carry forward the best of what we've received, and trusting that it will find its way to exactly where it needs to go.